Did someone ring and demanded a small SUV? Pit Stop and Volkswagen, always there to help.
SUVs. Everybody wants an SUV these days. It's actually so bad that normal cars are barely sold anymore. Which is weird, because SUVs, of course, they usually cost more, they don't have as powerful an engine, they have more fuel consumption because they're not so aerodynamic. They're also usually not as comfortable as normal cars, and yeah, it's weird. But if you absolutely do have to have an SUV, then why not get something like this, a Volkswagen T-Cross, which is smaller. It has a small 1-liter 3-cylinder engine and doesn't have all-wheel drive, which you really don't need to go to the shops and back and to go, I don't know, for a nice hike like this. And it's not that bad looking either.
On first look, at least at the front, it's the Tiguan's smaller brother. And it's not boring. Some chrome here and there, as well as interesting lines and lights, especially at the back.
But despite the fact that this is a small SUV, there is plenty of space inside. So if I sit in front and set my seat comfortably, so I still have space, I also have space at the back. Surprisingly much of it. Look at this!
The story with a good beginning then. Nice to look at, big on the inside. What about the other stuff?
Let's look at the boot or the trunk as well, because there cannot be a lot of space in there. But there is, actually. We put all of our equipment in there, no problem, and there's space for another large case like this. And over here a little bit, so it's quite surprising. Oh, I see that there's a couple of signs over here, so this is time for the Pit Stop Expert advice. What this means is that if you want to close the trunk or the boot lid, you place your hand like this and place it close to the plastic, and then you close it. It's a little bit tricky, but you have to be careful not to pinch your fingers. Ouch.
The T-Cross has the new Volkswagen steering wheel, which is a lot nicer to handle. A 70 kilowatt petrol engine only comes with a 5-speed manual, while the 85 kilowatt has the option of a 6-speed manual or 7-speed DSG. So far so good, but looks and practicality aren't everything.
I was kind of hoping that the weather would be nice when I was recording this, but oh well, it is raining now. So at least like usual you have some nice shots from the outside. Anyway, I was expecting to give this car some positives, some pluses, because, well, it's a small SUV, which now apparently everyone wants. So I think it's that sweet spot for the cars over here in Europe, because a lot of people want SUVs, but they don't necessarily have the money or want a large SUV of some sort. So they want something like this, a crossover, like the T-Cross. And, you know, this is perfect. But really, I cannot honestly recommend this because of a few very, very annoying issues. Just like the Skoda Scala, which I thought was a very nice car, but it had a few of really annoying things. The first of all, this is Volkswagen, so we know that it should be good build quality. Everything should be solid, nice, but it actually isn't. I don't know if this is a fluke or something, but it's constantly, if it's a slightly damaged road, this pillar over here and something I think in the vent will constantly rattle and buzz. It's very annoying. It also constantly rattles somewhere over there by the glove box. I don't know what it is. It's not something in the glove box, I checked. And of course also the center console. If I press against it with my knee, do you hear that? This is horrible. It's really annoying. And the worst thing is, you might say, oh, you're just nitpicking. So what? It's buzzing slightly over there and over there. That's nothing. But no, not really. With modern cars, that shouldn't really happen. And you know, this is a Volkswagen, so it should be a little bit better build quality. And let me tell you, I went on a slightly longer trip and it was very annoying. After a while, I started wishing it was quiet, which it wasn't, of course. It was buzzing all the time. And this thing with the knee here at the center console does also get very annoying because you rest your knee against the console pretty much. So every time you're in a bend or something, it's gonna go. The next thing on my let's rant about it list is the cruise control limiter, or more about the system that deals with it. Now, it appears that Volkswagen has been learning from Skoda and saw their whole physical buttons and all that interaction and said, that's not a bad idea, let's do something about that. So what happens is that, personally, I rarely use the radar cruise control, even though it's a really nice feature once you're on a highway and just driving for hundreds of kilometers. But most of the time, especially when I'm driving through cities and such, I like to use the limiter. So I set my limit to 50 kilometers per hour if I'm inside a city or whatever, and leave it there so I don't have to worry about it. And then of course I adjust the speed as I go out and in of towns and so on. But here, I've got a button on the steering wheel, which is the symbol for the, well, for the cruise control, I suppose. And you press that, and it says, you know, it turns on your cruise control, radar cruise control. So I said, okay, let's press it again. Cruise control deactivated. Okay, let's press it again. It's cruise control again. It's like, how do I get to my limiter? I want the limiter, I don't want that. And I figured out, oh, wait a second, there's another button underneath here, which is not the limiter, but it's the assist button, assistance. So you've got, what do you have? Lane assist, radar cruise control, and there's the limiter, and then you've got other stuff as well. So you have to use the buttons on the right to go down twice, press OK on the limiter, and now you have the limiter. You have to do that every time you start the car up. It's just, why? Just leave it there. Isn't there a memory function in this thing? So now I have my limiter on. Come on, there we go, limiter. So I can set that up, blah, blah, blah. But if I ever use this button to turn it off completely, not just cancel it, if I turn it off, it's going to revert to the radar cruise control. Ah, what were they thinking? Another thing is this 6-speed manual gearbox, which is actually okay most of the time. It's quite a nice, chunky, mechanical feel. But for some reason, somebody in the factory must have put a little bit of very fine sand between the 5th and 6th gear especially. Because if you go between 5th and 6th, it's almost like it's grinding something. It's very odd. And what is very annoying especially is when you're trying to quickly shift from, let's say, 4th to 5th. There we go. Sometimes you shift into 6th instead of 4th. And sometimes you lose, you know, where you are completely. That happens rarely, but it does happen. It's very odd. I don't know why they couldn't put some stronger, well, I don't know, make it go into neutral more firmly. So the final negative is sort of the engine. This has the 1-liter 3-cylinder engine, the turbocharged one, of course. That's sort of weird in a way, because, well, nothing happens below 2000 RPM because the turbine is still sleeping. So I mean, if you're driving very slowly in a city like this, it's not a problem. But if you need to move somewhere and you put your foot down, nothing, now, sort of. There was a bit of boost. So it's, yeah, you really have to shift it into high RPMs if you want to get anywhere. So what about the consumption? Well, I got it down to 5.1 liters per 100 kilometers, which is not amazing, but it's not bad. It's not bad. But here's the thing. When my colleague was driving it a bit faster, it also came up to 7.6, I believe, or was it 7.4? It doesn't matter. And that's quite very high for a car like this. So there we go, 4th gear, full speed. Now I have boost. It takes quite a while for something to happen. Now I have more boost. Yeah, what's going on? Why are you beeping at me? I just went over 90 slightly. Anyway, so you're going to probably stop me now and say, wait a second, Mr. Pit Stop. Isn't that the whole point of small engines? To have economy when you need it, 5.1, and power when you don't need economy but you need power, so just shift up into a lower gear, shift down, and you have power. And that's true, I agree. But I do have to say, while I was trying to drive economically, I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone behind me was losing their hair and their mind over me because I was going so slowly. Because of course I was trying to drive according to what the computer was telling me. So if it said, oh look, you're climbing up a slope and you're in 4th gear, better put it into 5th, it's going to be more economical. So I did. And that's another really annoying thing that happens with this car. Once you do climb a slight slope and you do put it into a gear that will put the engine into about 1800, 1700 RPM, there will be this god-awful resonating buzz inside the cabin because of the 3 cylinders. And it's just, it's extraordinarily annoying. So now if you've gotten to this point in the video, I congratulate you, because you've been listening to me for about 6 minutes or something, rant on and on and on about all the things that I did not like. But I honestly don't like them. I think they're very, very annoying. So now let's talk about the positives in this car. And the first one is spaciousness. This isn't really a giant SUV. This isn't, I don't know, a Suburban, a Chevrolet Suburban or something. But it certainly feels a lot larger inside than it actually is on the outside. So I think that's quite a big plus. Over here, I don't feel like I'm trapped in all this plastic and everything. It's nice and spacious. And especially in the back. I was driving my mother, and she said that it was pretty fantastic at the back. Almost like in a cathedral. Of course, she was exaggerating, but she really, really liked it. And it was funny because she said for the Nissan X-Trail, which she also rode in the back, that was pretty abysmal. That was very uncomfortable, and after a while her legs were hurting back there. So that was quite surprising for me. So spaciousness, that's a big plus in this car. Now the next plus on the list is the engine. You're gonna say, wait a second, didn't you say the engine was a minus? Well, if you thrash it, it's actually quite fun. It's actually surprisingly powerful. But if you thrash it, of course, it's also going to get a lot thirstier if you do. So if you're driving through a city and you're doing it economically, you're going to feel that turbo lag, that turbo hole. But yes, if you thrash it and you keep it above 4,000 RPM, it's actually a lot of fun. And it doesn't actually have a, wow, that was a lot of actuallys. It doesn't have a bad sound either, because it's a 3-cylinder. So it's slightly akin to a V6. So in the end, it's actually quite a difficult decision. This, like the Skoda Scala, maybe even more so, this car has so many annoying things and negatives, but also so many positives. It's really difficult to recommend it at the end of the day. But what I always say to people, if you're really interested in a car, don't just watch my video, also go and test it yourself. Take it for a drive. And don't do the whole promotional thing where you sit in there for 10 minutes, drive it a little bit while a guy tells you, oh, this is the best in the world, this is so good, this is new technology, blah, 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 blah. That's just yada, yada. You have to see for yourself whether you like something or not. Take it for a drive for an entire day. Rent it if you can or something, if you cannot get a test drive for one day. So, at the end of the day, I probably wouldn't buy it if I was looking for a tiny SUV, for a small SUV, but you might be less nitpicky than I am. So, yeah, swings and roundabouts.
The base T-Cross starts at 16,000 euros, while the top-of-the-line style model with a 115 horsepower petrol engine, automatic gearbox and all of the optional extras make that price climb to 30,000 euros. A more powerful 150 horsepower petrol is coming soon.